Hello, everybody. I'm still Lindy Wezikai. When I grew up, gosh, it's like many moons ago now, in the dusty streets of Rockville in Soweto, there was this, where's Shades? There was this, but there were many games that we used to play. One of my favorites was this one. Please indulge me, let's just stand up. You need rhythm for this one. Let's go. Okay, are we there? Are they? We are all. Someone like home. You needed to have, if you were on the school, you saw it didn't work between me and Chase. Because this was about being in a group. Another one, and if there were 2 or 3 or 4 of you, and you wanted to play this other one, I can't quite do it on my own. But you sort of cluster together and then pump outwards. And the more, the merrier. And you keep pumping and pumping. And this is why we are here today. This is about making the circle bigger. That's what inclusion is about. Because
say your what is that?
Hello? Somebody on the line?
Someone's hooked.
Well, they're invited to engage, so they're already engaging. The point I'm making.
I hope it was a good show. It was a good show.
You dance on it.
Can I sit down? There's another moderator, clearly. Am I safe now?
You're safe.
You
are indeed safe.
We are talking about inclusion. Making the circle bigger is what inclusion is about. When you have spaces where only 1 or 2 or 3 can play, the game is not the same and it's not fun. But the more people you have and you include, you get the richness of the game. This is not a game, what we're talking about today. This is serious. Our founding document, and I'll read it to you because I know we don't have the Constitution as our bedtime reading as South Africans. So, right at the beginning in the preamble, it says, "We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity." Right at the beginning, before we even start getting to clauses, we are in. South Africa belongs to all who live in it. The next bit, we all know about clause 9. Seeing that we're talking business today, clause 22 says, and it talks about freedom of trade, occupation, and profession. Every citizen has the right to choose their trade, occupation, or profession freely. The practice of a trade, profession, or occupation may be regulated by law. All I'm trying to say is, our founding document already includes us. How do we make that workable? So today, what this event, this session, this gathering today is about, is for us to talk about why LGBT inclusion matters for business. Why is it relevant for business? There are 3 things that we're going to be teasing out during the course of today. So what we'll be doing with my panelists here is just to start to tease out at a very high level those 3 aspects. The first one is the commercial aspect of inclusion. Commercial being the business side, as well as the employment side for those of us who can run businesses or are employees. The second aspect is what we call the compliance aspect. What do the laws say? I mean, the fundamental law already says we are in. And we've got a raft of legislation, we've got codes, we've got all sorts of laws in this country. Is there an LGBT inclusion imperative in our laws as they currently stand? The third one is the ethical or moral dimension. What is the basis, ethically speaking, for including members of the LGBT plus community? My panelists this morning are, and I'll introduce them right now as they come up. Mr. Sizwe Mbele is the head of strategy from Business Leadership South Africa, or BLSA. I'm Sizwe. Second panelist is Mr. Landa Mabenge from Landa Mabenge Consulting. Come, Landa. So, I've gone through the Constitution and what it says. One of the things that we struggle with at this point in time in South Africa is data and research. But globally, a lot of research has been done around the business case for inclusion, especially in the workplace. It is known that inclusion encourages engagement. So when employees are included, feel included, they are more engaged. When they are more engaged, their talent bursts, they are more productive. There's a virtuous cycle for a workplace that is inclusive. So people show up as they really are, they are engaged, they are more productive, there's better teamwork, there's more productivity, and so on it goes. There's also an aspect around safety. For places of work where safety is paramount. I work in mining. Safety is do or die. If you blink and you don't have your colleagues back, you cannot guarantee that you'll go back home alive. At Shell, they did a study a few years ago where they found that there is a direct correlation between inclusion and safety at work. A 1 percentage point increase in inclusive practices correlates to a 4% increase or decrease rather in the likelihood of accidents at work. So that's significant for places of work where having an accident can be a fatality. You can die and not go home at the end of the day. Inclusion is also important from the perspective of other aspects of diversity. So today we are talking about LGBT in terms of the workplace. So I'm teasing some of these aspects out in terms of the data that we have. There's going to be a session this morning around the pink brand and the commercial aspects. So I know there's a study that was done and led by the other foundation. We are worth, as a community, in terms of our buying power, between 53 billion and, 204 billion. Well, I'll take the 53, you know. I'll take the 53 on any given day. But that is the range of our buying power. But when the market doesn't talk to us as a community of buyers, of people who are interested in certain goods and services, and certain approaches to those goods and services, they're going to miss out on the 53 to 202, and maybe those are even conservative estimates. But that's what we are worth. We don't talk about that a whole lot. We just join, you know, we go into Pick n Pay or Checkers or whatever for whatever we need, and we go to the petrol station to pour our petrol. We do as everybody else is doing, and nobody talks to us, and we don't engage them about what we want and how we want to be approached. So these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. Sizwe, what are your perspectives from a BLSA perspective as well as you individually around these three aspects?
Yeah, thanks very much. Good morning to everyone. At least I work worked for Shell for about 9 years, and so it gave me a good foundation in terms of the LGBTI community. So I'm quite grateful for the opportunity because it opened my eyes. I used to start with this provocative thought that for LGBTI conversation, it should be a different conversation. I don't see why it should be a different conversation. We spoke about inclusiveness. BLSA emphasizes one of the key pillars to say that we need to drive economic growth, inclusiveness. And when we talk about inclusiveness, people normally narrow the definition to look at gender. But certainly the LGBTI community should be a significant part of that, as well as transformation. And I'll come to that point. So it is important because BLSA represents at least 86 CEOs, 80% of them they are in JSA. So if we advocate for the rights, the voice of LGBTI community, we are talking to really the heads of businesses, especially when you talk about the financial boss. And also BNSA advocate for threatening of key state institutions, because whenever you find discrimination, whenever you are faced with discrimination, you're faced with safety issues we mentioned. And that's why we run to institutions. And these institutions need to be strengthened, they need to be educated, because this patriarchy, this old thinking in terms of morality, they still don't get it. So BLSA should be at the center of educating these business leaders to make sure that this community is respected. They are not different. It's not different about it. There's nothing different about them. They are part of our community. But also the third pillar that BLSA proud itself on is positioning business as a national asset. And basically there we're talking about mainly our people. And if you don't get the diversity and inclusiveness, you're not going to get the full potential of what the business can drive. There's a lot of emphasis globally in terms of women, where they say 26%, once you include women and people that have been disadvantaged, you get about 26% increase in global GDP. Very few is being said about the LGBTI community that if you actually add the diversity and inclusiveness, at least educating this. One thing that's been puzzling, and you see that in the studies that Claudia Gorman spoke about the quiet revolution. It says that if we don't include all communities, if we don't take advantages of all the talent that the communities offers, it's like a disequilibrium. So we are leaving valuable assets, diversity of voices, diversity of skills, inclusiveness of everyone in that. So I'm quite excited to be here because having worked for Shell in all these 37 countries in Africa, I used to manage them, so now I work for BLSA, which is an advocacy group. At least I got an opportunity to educate some of the people and say they are not different than me. They are not different from anyone else. And prior to that, I used to work for Caltex in the US. This LGBTI community is quite celebrated. Here, we still see a lot of patriarchy, we still see a lot of discrimination, something that we should fight against. And we see that, especially when it comes to employment equity, there is a lot of emphasis in terms of including women. But now we need to be fighting for inclusiveness of LGBTI community, to say that we are missing out on those things. And because in sub-Saharan Africa, we are also leaving a lot of potential when it comes to those things. So BLSA should not be pursuing the agenda of economic growth transformation in a narrow definition when it comes to inclusiveness. It should be advocating for LGBTI inclusiveness in the whole of the economy. Let me end there by saying that I believe that the failures to confront the transformation and moral imperatives into an economic one result in us in having an untapped growth. That's a store of valuable things and delightful things. And we have a missed opportunity. I've already said that in a SSA. There's a potential, if we include the LGBTI community, whereby we can get our economic growth by at least 27%. These are business cases if we want. And such numbers are providing a powerful link when we talk about social cohesion, because we do know that if leaders are advocating for the right of LGBTI community, that's when they start to be embraced. So I'm hoping that as we look at fourth industrial revolution, economic growth, we don't leave any talent, we don't leave any different voice, if you like, which is not different to me. So we need to be saying, how do we embrace our brothers and sisters and our communities so that at least we get to celebrate South Africa and the world truly belongs to all who lives in it. And we should all be fostering for that. Let me stop there for now.
Great, thank you. I'll
Thank
give you the
you.
opportunity to respond.
My response is Caesar directly. No, thank you for that. I think, firstly, let me just say what Lana Mabenga Consulting is and what I do. Lana Mabenga Consulting is a social enterprise. I educate on what it means to be transgender. I create awareness around transgender reality. And I also link young people who identify as transgender to care. Now, the reason why I chose to have this enterprise is because, you know, you realize the restrictive policies and practices in the workplace and the lack of awareness and knowledge on issues that affect LGBTI persons. So I felt it is very necessary to have such an organization that is going to drive change and try and push it out as best as possible. And also in workspaces, traditional businesses, you'll find that if we ignore LGBTI persons, then it might go away. And I mean, that's been the reality for a lot of people, which causes a lot of people not to want to live their truth, because they're going to be sidelined and they're going to be pushed out because of the culture that dominates in the workspace. So I feel, like you say, going back to the Constitution, I mean, our Constitution is the first in the world to have specific protections and recognition for gender diversity and sexual diversity. So I feel that is why we need to have the economic inclusion and recognition of LGBT businesses in South Africa, right? Because it's right there, it's in black and white, it's a fundamental right of every single human being. And if we go back to look at who heads up these businesses, it's human beings, right? So if we remove the labels, if we remove the gender, if we remove the sexuality, ultimately it filters down or it decants to human beings are running these organizations. So why then do we need to ostracize those who are different in terms of their gender and their sexuality? So I think personally, the social and economic costs of excluding LGBTI persons in businesses are very high. Because you find that resources now need to be rechanneled in terms of fighting the phobias, fighting the prejudice, whereas they could be used and redirected into improving the realities in the workspaces. And also, like you said, the pink rand. I mean, there's a lot of potential there. So I feel it's a conversation that it's great that it started, but one that needs to continue, because also within the LGBT space, those that have had the privilege to have amazing journeys, for an example, should also be powering back and unpacking these conversations and driving the change that we want to see. So I truly believe that it's a necessary element of human life. The ethical aspect, again, it's a moral element to say, what right do I have to exclude someone else based on their gender or sexuality, right? I don't have a right to do that. And I think then, even in businesses, in going back to HR policies, in going back to formulating these frameworks, we need to rely on the fundamental provisions and protections that are given to us by our model constitution, which goes back to everyone has got the right to be who they are, and everyone has got the right to participate in the economy of the country.
Thank you. discussion up for debate, question and answers. I'm not suggesting that the questions must be directed to the panel necessarily. I think this is a space for us all to grow and share our own experiences, our perspectives. There's just two things that sort of stuck out for me when both Sizwe and Kanda spoke. I think the problem that we have is sameness. You know, in that we get bucketed into sameness. That actually is the challenge. We are equal, but we are different. And that's where difference becomes a problem, because the worldview is has a particular lens on what people should look like, what they should wear. You know, if you present as females dress like this, females behave like this, etc., etc. So I think as a society, as business, the first thing that we must get married to is difference, because that's the first start for me, the starting point to understanding the fact that different people, different experiences, different expectations. And I suppose the idea with business, typically, it's like a one size fits all. You know, you try and put people through a sausage machine and get everybody to have the same experience, because it's easier, it's cheaper that way. The difficulty with difference is that it forces you to customize, because you're dealing with different people. They'll have different needs and different expectations. So maybe a message from myself to BLSA is that, you know, they should tell the CEOs to prepare for difference. And not have workplaces that are customized for sameness.
Can I say one thing on that one? Because
Okay, let me just make my second point, because I'll forget it. I think while we sit here in this very nice venue and talk about the 53 billions and the 204 billions, the poverty aspects of the LGBT community is something that shouldn't escape us in this room. Because while we talk about what the opportunity missed by business from a pink rent perspective, the other side of that spectrum is the just total exclusion from market participation, of members of LGBTI community, which leads to, when we talk about extreme poverty in this country, I don't think, and I don't know whether we have actually come to understand what extreme poverty within the LGBT context actually is, because that's the other side of the spectrum. When you can't even get through any door, you can have a business, you can't get a job, what that means. And I think this is part of the things that we should be discussing today. Sorry, Susan.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that I actually like it, because in business they emphasize a lot of diversity and inclusiveness, what ideas, and they tend to forget about diversity and inclusiveness of people. That we are leaving this untapped talent and resources when it comes to that. So it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we challenge this anachronistic mentality, this old, updated social norms, which says that we want the oneness. That should not be the case, because right now we see the role that women play, we see the role that people with disability have, and I'm saying that it's time that we raise the voice for people, for communities of LGBTI, so that at least they take their rightful place in society as well as in business. And we know some certain organizations, they are so different in here, to put it in a lighter way. They prejudice people that then look the same as them, especially when it comes to business. Financial service sectors, for example, it's known to differentiate people, and you tend to be ostracized. And one of the things that BLSA should be fighting for is to ensure that these people are embraced. People who should be ostracized are those that still believe in old morality and believe that women's places in the kitchen, LGBTI, those are the people that don't belong to the society. Those are the people. People like President of Uganda, whereby you cannot express yourself. Those are the leaders that should be ostracized in society. And it's time now that we raise the bar by pinpointing those individuals that tends to differentiate and ostracize the LGBTI community. That's all I wanted to say, Lily.
Thank you so much. Let's engage. Questions, answers, contributions. Let me take this.
So I think you mentioned that our frameworks and the Constitution, I think a lot of the people sitting here are part of quite strong affinity groups within business already. And we have these progressive human capital policies. But the real struggle is to change the culture and to get the buy-in from and I think the problem is to everybody heard me, right? So I think the problem is not necessarily with the framework, not necessarily with the policy. The change is changing the culture and creating that inclusive culture within business. And I think that will trickle down into society and all of that. I think as leaders in business, one of our main jobs is to influence societal views, and it's to create that culture. Now, I don't have the answer to it, but I think that's the one thing that we could try and unravel a bit more.
Can I just throw that back at you? So in working with the culture, right? Would that then mean that we require or ask people who identify as LGBTI in those spaces to out themselves so that the culture can evolve? I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't think it's necessarily for somebody has to come out or out themselves. I think there's a lot of people already out in business, and I challenge everybody who's out of business. It's your responsibility. It's something that in our firm has changed quite a bit when people started saying, but I'm proud to be who I am, and I can offer so much more to the business just because of that. And it's also an awareness thing. So one of the comments I would like to make is that it's an awareness thing. I think it's very important that we make people aware of it. And unfortunately, I'm going to use that. The staunch Afrikaans woman who is your boss, he needs to be made aware of the fact. He's most probably never engaged with a gay man in his life. So it's also important for that he knows of. So yeah, I think it's an awareness thing, number one, and I think it's important to also, it's great to have these policies, but who really reads their human capital policies? So let's start at that point. To when we recruit people, when we have interviews with people, let's put this out there and let's open the conversation at the first get-go when they join the firm.
A bit of a boring statistic, but I think it's relevant to what you just said in terms of what's coming. Currently, by 2025, 50% of the workplace, this is a global statistic, will be made up of millennials, of whom 20% identify as LGBT+. So if the workplace thinks it's going to stay static, and everybody, because certainly when I started working 24 years ago, you had this paradigm of, the culture here. So
Yes.
Doesn't matter you come as a circle, as a triangle, as a rectangle, this is square. You fit into the culture here. That's going to have to be thrown out of the window. Next contribution. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just in response to your initial point about sameness, and in fact to this last point as well. So what do we name ourselves? I've always been in two minds about this LGBTQ. Well, sometimes the Q's there, sometimes not. I used to be gay the last time I checked, and I thought so. But seriously speaking, is it important, this issue of how we name ourselves? Is it about finding one word that is easy? Is it in fact important to name each of those letters? So maybe we're all just plus. But I think for me, and I'd be interested to hear some views on, is it important, this issue of how we name ourselves? Thanks.
And that's a question for the plenary.
thank you, Linda, and firstly, thanks for inviting us to be here today. I think there's a tremendous diversity of voices participating and adding value to PLUS's objectives. I speak from, for example, the tourism sector over my experience over the last 20 years, and what I found is that it's been a continuous case of engagement to shift that paradigm mindset, that patriarchal mindset of inclusion. You'll find that hotel groups and what have been very happy to have LGBTI members of staff. That's fine. They can be cleaning rooms, they can be serving at the buffet table. But when it came to management and when it came to engaging with customers and or colleagues, they became a little bit uncomfortable. And I found that over 20 years of constant engagement at things like tourism and Darwin and others, the mindset is slowly shifting. We're just very fortunate, as you said, that we're in a period with millennials where their mindset is that much more open. So we actually have fertile ground to achieve change the way we want to. But in a sector like that, it's the constant engagement to say, you realize that there is a customer base out there that can grow the country's economy, that globally the UN WTO, the World Tourism Organization, values at about $211 billion in 2016. That's a humongous amount of money that could be feeding into the South African tourism economy. And yet, I constantly am engaging with small practitioners. So it's not the big corporates that I'm particularly worried about. I'm alluding to your points about policy and people don't read their own policy. But it's the smaller operators who really are engaging themselves with very difficult points of view, that they have to actually have these kind of customers, that they actually have these staff, and they can't keep their personal viewpoints to the forefront of their business. Their personal viewpoints have to take a back seat, and business principles have to come forward. So that challenge is being met, but very slowly. So coming together like this augments that process and certainly helps us achieve that goal.
Talk about the tourism sector. It's still fine. That when you book for 2 women, you get 2 beds. Then automatically it's like a default, you get twin beds. And you have to undo the twin beds. And no, excuse me, it's 1 bed that I'm looking for, and there's still this, raising of the eyebrows. Like, when are you gonna get it right?
It's a very good analogy, and it's the one we constantly bring up. But I've got to tell you, I went to a hotel with a gay friend of mine, but we were booking as friends, and they'd already offered us the king-size bed to share. And I had to say, I'm sorry, I'm here just with a friend. So it is slow transformation.
Next question. Comment. Yes, sir.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for a challenging panel. I just have a question or a comment for everyone. A lot of businesses will be trying to grow their footprint across, Caesar mentioned Sub-Saharan Africa. And I imagine a lot of businesses represented here will be trying to grow their footprint there. And I'm wondering, would this be a forum for challenging those businesses not to play safe in terms of their policies in countries that are not, whose laws are not LGBTI friendly? Are they just going to play safe, or is there a line between championing human rights, the human rights of your staff and of your stakeholders, and on the other hand, observing the law of the land in which you're doing business? Because the world is getting smaller. We can't be Africa light anymore. And that's just something I think we need to keep an eye on. It's years before that kind of conversation becomes an immediate, urgent concern, but it's something we do have to keep in mind as the world shrinks and as we enter the 4th Industrial Revolution. Thank you.
The last time I checked, an unjust law is worthy not to be observed.
Yes.
Any other contributions or answers to? Let's have a look. This side is just
Very quiet.
there's nobody home.
Diversity of views.
Welcome to the session.
Can I comment about the LGBTQI, just from my thinking and perspective, right? I think over time, the community has evolved in terms of gender and sexual diversity, right? So you find a lot of fluidity in terms of sexual orientation and your gender as well. And I suppose then that is why it becomes, for lack of a better way of putting it, imperative for the people in the community to be able to own how they feel or how they want to be referred to and received within the greater society. And I suspect that's why the language then part of it becomes important, because like just like human beings are evolving, so is the language, and so is the way that people are becoming more liberated to be themselves and identify themselves as who and what they feel to be. I think that's where it's coming from and going.
I wanted to comment about the framework, because we've got these policies, these laws, that they are not enough. I'll draw a parallel. We have this Chapter 9 institution, no one used to care about the public protector. It's the individuals that are there. So, saying like at home or in organization, the fish rod from the head. So those people need to change. So you might have as many laws as possible. You might have as many institutions. You might have many policies processes. But if people don't get it, they won't be going to get the result, the desired result. So it's incumbent on all of us here, whether we are straight or not straight, I don't know what's the correct term, that all of us needs to show people that there is value in diversity and inclusiveness. There's so much value in ensuring that people are embraced. I think in Century or even in some other countries, even today, women are still frowned upon. But once you bring them into the economic sphere, they participate, that's when you see this multiplier effect. Can you imagine if the world were to embrace the LGBTI community, the diversity of voices, of ideas, the diversity of thought, the growth, the transformation, as well as peace and security, which is quite needed. We tend to focus on business cases, but although the human element, it tends to take the backseat.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that BNSA and other organizations, whoever is your boss, even your peers, they need to be taught. And then those that don't get it, they probably need to be forced, because sometimes that's what is needed.
Patrick Winter from Northern School. I want to, there's a interesting thing in the insurance laws. There's a regulation which says you have to treat customers fairly. And there's a governance regulation which says that you've got to be able to demonstrate that at board level downwards you are addressing the issue, that you have a policy, and that you are inculcating the culture of treating customers fairly throughout your organization. And that's a regulation, and you can get fined for not doing it. And I think that if we are treating everyone fairly, regulations in governance laws, so you have to address this at board level, you must show me how you're doing it, what the policy is, how you engage with it every board meeting, how your social and ethics committee, which I'll come to later, deals with it. So it is actually, the culture is put into the law. Because we talk about it, but unless there's some guidance, and it's not because I want to compel people to do it, because that doesn't always work, but remind people to do it.
Steve?
Can I?
Fine.
I just want to respond to your question around Africa and the continent. Look, we have over 40,000 colleagues in ABSA across the continent, and that is a challenge for us. And look, we don't have all of the answers. When we launched our network in 2014, we used to censor all of our communications into the rest of Africa. We just used to send them to South Africa. Here we are 4 years later, and we don't do that anymore. And we send all of our comms to all of our colleagues, no matter where they are. We have mentorship programs set up in order to be able to support colleagues in our organisation, no matter where they are. And in fact, our executive committee and chair lady actually also have these conversations with people in country at various senior levels. So as an organisation, this is what we stand for, these are our values, and that's the way that we've started to tackle some of that. Don't have all the answers, it's always going to be challenging, but we've actually taken some pretty bold and brave steps in order to be able to do that. And that's very different to where we were 4 years ago.
I'm switching banks.
Thanks, Lydia. Thanks, panelists, and maybe probably this is for Caesar. I have just two questions. One is, why is the business community scared of fast-tracking transformation? And I think we need to be frank about this. You know, it has taken us so long to transform, not only just on LGBTI issues, even around gender issues. You know, we still fight for you know, barometer, the gender barometer of, you know, ensuring women take the rightful positions. But right now, you know, similarly, so it's not even a new story. We've seen this, how we fight for race, one, how we fight for gender, two, now even recognition of sexual diversity is what we are fighting for now. Why is it taking the business community this long to transform? Secondly, is the question around protecting human rights, even in the business space. We have to deal, I mean, I work with human rights issues and LGBTI community. We have quite a lot of workplace discrimination cases. Why is the business community not fully committing to human rights? We know that the economy requires population and requires a healthy, like you say, peaceful, peace and security, it requires that. But the population also needs that. Why are we not respecting human rights and be putting our foot down? Like we require profit, we must put our foot down for human rights. Why is it taking us that long to transform?
I wouldn't know much, but I think what I do know that in terms of human nature, the status quo tends to favor. We all say we like to change, but when it comes to really changing in everything, I mean, women's they paid 24, 20, up to 26% less than men for the same work. Some of them are overly qualified. But because we've always felt comfortable with the status quo, and I'm saying, I revert back to my earlier statement, it says that the responsibility resides within all of us here to make sure that we change the status quo, that anachronistic moral compass, that social cohesion, that nothing about us, for us, and without us. That's what we should be saying. The students for the Fifth Must Fall, that's what they taught us, that nothing for us, about us, without us. So LGBT community needs to be saying that this diversity and inclusiveness, this different voice, this difference, if you like, is the source of inspiration, creativity, and innovation. Africa, in a way, youngest continent of 1.3 billion people, a younger generation. That is why you look at the countries in Asia, they are looking at Africa and say, Africa should be the future. That should be the source of resources, not when it comes to minerals only, but when it comes to talent. And that talent is brought about diversity. The human right, that is why I'm saying that the leaders need to be taught about that. Because only if the leaders, they bring that vision, they sponsor programs, they sponsor some kind of communication, they sponsor this kind of fora, this kind of engagement, do we get to be comfortable? I don't have to belong to the community to respect it. LGBTI right community are human rights. So up until we tend to embrace that, we sponsor it, we encourage that diversity, we make sure that they don't get overlooked when it comes to promotion, we'll never get it right. So the challenge is within us. It took many moons up until women were actually respected. It's still not happening in industries, in companies. This is a struggle for all of us, and surrender is not an option.
My take, for what it's worth, we've tended not to see the correlation between transformation and democracy. That actually transformation is a democracy project. If you transform and you are inclusive, you foster the things that we're fighting for, you are actually underpinning democracy. So our business will be all over the place, protesting, commenting, and making submissions about things that might not be going right. at a democracy level. They don't see possibly that there are elements of the democratic project that they should be grasping themselves and doing really well. So until we wait for these regulations, Patrick, that there must be something in some regulation that forces me to do the right thing. And yet when democracy starts to falter and starts to fail, we want to look at a political level, but we don't see that there are certain elements of democracy that are within our grasp that we should be doing something about. And my view is that transformation is a democracy project. If we do it right, it supports the project that we're busy with called democracy. So.
Good morning, everyone. Alison from Port Elizabeth. I think the biggest challenge in business and in government is really a lack of education amongst the leaders. Because even if people are old and they lead or participate in current events, then people's minds do change or become altered when policies have to be implemented. When we had a similar session in PE with even then, we were talking about having a certain percentage of business going to LGBTI communities. I had a big issue with that because I don't want to get business because I'm labeled. I want to get business because I'm good. The other issue I have is the majority of our brothers and sisters. The issue you raised earlier on, who are not part of the system. And that segment is growing bigger by the day. And the only reason I would say why I have decided to take this day to come here was to look at how this kind of forum will assist that millions of people. Because those guys are not there because they don't want to work or study, but because of what they're going through. So I'm hoping that, in this day, as we move forward, we will be looking at programs to assist those individuals who are out of the system.
I think it's probably a good place to, I'm not going to close you out, but I think probably I'm going to the last speaker. Oh, now we've got an awakening happening on this side of the room. Quickly, please.
Thank you for not closing me out. I think this is a very challenging time for corporate South Africa. One of the impacts of the state capture has shown the power and complacency of corporates in in the South African political system. But I think what it has also shown is the immense power which business leaders hold. And I think that power should be used, as my colleague has said, for advancing a human rights agenda. So even when corporates are engaging in other jurisdictions in Africa, they have access to those corridors of power where they can make it particularly forceful changes with government leadership. And I can use the example of IBM in India, where the leadership within IBM was engaging with very conservative BJP government in ensuring that as the company was expanding through India, that they were ensuring that there was a human rights agenda. Now, I think India is in a watershed moment when it comes to LGBTIQ, and I think part of that has really been the impact of corporates. So I think particularly when we look beyond just advocating for diversity within workplaces, business South Africa has access to the corridors of power where it matters, and they should be using that for the good of our community.
Yesterday I flew in from Germany to attend this conference, so I'm happy not to be excluded. Thank you. I'm actually writing a book on LGBT in global business. I've been writing a book already since 4 years ago, which focused only on Germany, but this one is focusing on global business. So I was very curious when I heard that you're having this conference, because in a way, this of course is setting a sign, to me at least. There was a similar conference some weeks ago in Hong Kong, which is of course different cultural setting. But I think it's no coincidence that you, as a front leader here in Africa, are doing this first, I think, first conference of that kind on the continent, as well as Hong Kong that's popping up at this conference. On Friday, I was on Thursday, I was at a big event at ThyssenKrupp in Germany, and there was a professor giving a presentation on the connection between transformation and diversity, and in particular LGBT diversity. And he was trying to describe that connected to certain sort of business developments and technical developments, they are very often from the emergence of one sort of key idea until sort of getting this about to become mainstream, it takes 50 years approximately. And when he was making this point, I was thinking, well, you're having this conference here, Hong Kong is making this conference, there are many things popping up, actually, agents of change worldwide, globally, in many ways, in many countries, in different constellations. And if you look back, for instance, in '69, when there were the Stonewall riots in New York, next year it's 50 years. To me, I think this has been a long time, but in a way it's gone very, very fast. One week ago I had an interview with a human rights lawyer in London, and he said, you know, everybody today thinks for a gay person London is a wonderful, wonderful place to live. He said, well, I'm old enough, he's 50 plus, so you know what he's talking about. He said, well, some 20 years ago it was one of the worst places to live. And I think we tend to forget that some change takes time on the one hand, and that things can then change very happen, in particular with respect to LGBT. The last point, I could go on, but just one last point is talking about the role of corporates. What I sensed during the last 5 years, so connecting to this, my first research on my first book, which was dedicated only to Germany, it was also covering gay football fan clubs and church and the army, so completely different. This is only focused here now in global business. That the global corporates are sort of becoming the drivers of change worldwide. And not just in a different way, of course, in different cultural settings, and my impression as well here in South Africa in some way. And there may be as well an effect as well to small and medium-sized companies, because there's as well a tendency that the corporates are setting up a standard sort of supplier diversity to impose roles on small and medium-sized companies to comply to certain diversity things as well. LGBT things. This is a big trend actually going on. So there's as well hope for South Africa, because this was coming up. This topic was small and medium-sized companies. So I think, of course, I understand very much that you're impatient here, but I think this is a momentum, a historical momentum, and things take some time, but they then finally can happen very fast.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Let me thank, I am closing, I'm out of time. Let me thank my panelists, Sizwe and Landa, for participating in this discussion, and thank you all. I'm hoping that the discussions that we had, the questions, the theories, even the answers will, percolate into the session, the various sessions that we'll have during today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.